Welcome to this live. I'm gonna wait. I'm trying to figure out a couple things, see if I'm gonna have any guests or anything. But in the meantime, hi, how are you? And welcome. Daniel's also very excited. It's a lot easier now that you guys are used to these lives to, you understand the noise in the background a little bit. So, all right, let me see. So first of all, I've got this. Is there a link to this? All right. Let me see. So first of all, how do I quiet myself? There I go. Okay. All right. So just in case I need that and whatever. Okay. So, I'm sitting here in Jerusalem and I'm sure there's a ton of news happening here, of course. But today we have all been a little preoccupied with other news that came from northeast of here, from the small nation of Armenia, the first Christian nation, the first nation to declare Christianity its national religion. And they made an announcement today. So that is what I wanted to talk about. This is actually he's at work right now. Oh darn. Oh, there should be a next time. Hold on. I'm writing to somebody I invited to be on. All right. So today, the nation of Armenia announced that it recognizes Palestine as a state, which has, up until this point, has not been a state and has not been officially recognized. Overall, it's not a state, and they are about, I think, the ninth nation since the war started to do that. So the other nations that have recently, there's Spain and Norway and Ireland did that. And so without any warning or preamble whatsoever, Armenia announced that it is also going to recognize. So let's, first of all, let's go to the news. I am going to try to share this screen. Let's see. Do you see that? Do you see that? Yes, you do. Okay, awesome. All right, so did I get the right one is the question? Yes. Okay, here is statement by Armenia's foreign ministry, and this just came out this morning. The catastrophic and humanitarian situation in Gaza and the ongoing military conflict are among the primary issues on the international political agenda that require settlement. The Republic of Armenia categorically rejects the targeting of civilian infrastructure, violence against the civilian population, and the hostage taking of citizens during armed conflicts, joining the international community's demand for their unconditional release. The Republic of Armenia has joined the resolutions of the UN General Assembly calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Furthermore, the Republic of Armenia is genuinely committed to establishing peace and stability in the Middle East and lasting reconciliation between the Jewish and Palestinian peoples. On various international platforms, our position has consistently been in favor of a peaceful and comprehensive settlement of the Palestinian issue, and we support the two-state solution to the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. We are convinced that this is the only way to ensure that both Palestinians and Israelis can fulfill their legitimate aspirations. And by the way, many countries support the two-state solution. There's even the State Department of the U.S. has supported the two-state solution. But here is the crucial sentence right here that made big news here. Based on, oh wait, guys, can you open the door? I think Dad's trying to get in. Based on the foregoing and reaffirming based on the foregoing and reaffirming our commitment to the international law and the principles of equality, sovereignty, and peaceful coexistence of peoples, the Republic of Armenia recognizes the state of Palestine. Okay, so that is what is news today, is that that Armenia decided to recognize Palestine as a state. And so this comes at a time where, first of all, it came out of the blue. Now, I spoke with some reporters who are in Armenia that cover Armenian politics, and off the record on background, I spoke with them, and I asked them, like, why is Armenia doing that, and why now? Had this been a debate in Armenia, in Armenian politics, like in the parliament, in the media? And they said, no, it absolutely hadn't been. So I found that really, because it also took us all by surprise. And the question is, what does it gain Armenia now to do that? I can show you some of the, let's see how the Israeli media is reporting this. So this is the Jerusalem Post, and the Israeli Foreign Ministry summons the Armenian ambassador amid bold step to back Palestinian state. So always being a supporter of a two-state. So this is in response to the recognition, Israel's foreign ministry summoned the Armenian ambassador to Israel for a stern reprimand. And let's see, in a longer statement, all right, we read it. To point out that the statement also did condemn the taking of hostages. Let's see if there's anything else from Israel here. So here's the numbers right here. Some 145 countries have recognized Palestine as a state since 1998, with these following countries just making that move in the last 2 months, which includes Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, the Bahamas, Norway, Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia. And let's see. Now, here is another part we want to focus on. This sentence right here. Anti-Semitism has been rampant in Armenia since the war broke out as well, with Jewish communities in the region fearful and having been attacked several times. I, mind you, have an answer to that. I just spoke with somebody from the Jewish community in Yerevan, in Armenia, and it's actually not quite the case. And there's a lot more, the seems to be a campaign to disparage Armenia's reputation as anti-Semitic, and that seems to be there are allegations that it's being done by another country. So, and this article also points out that Armenian ties with Iran, that Armenia has become more and more closely associated with Iran in recent years, amid rising tensions with Azerbaijan. Now, that is something that we're going to have to touch on as well. So, okay, so I see a question from Dot Leshem. Do I know you? Were you in Lucas's class? That is like really cool if this is you that's watching this. Okay. So nobody knows the actual reason, but I do want to get into this actually, that Israel, so the reasons that are being bandied about right now are that this could be Armenia's way of taking a swipe at Israel for selling weapons to Azerbaijan. Hi, Dot. I can't believe you're watching. Thank you so much. Wow. How are you and how is your family? So, yes, in answer to your question, some people are saying that this might be in response to that, but it also it seems a little short-sighted if it would be just because of that. But Israel is supplies, is it like 60% of the arms that go to Azerbaijan, and there were several big shipments over the last couple of years. And there's a reporter at Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, who actually tracks the shipments between Israel and Azerbaijan. And actually, there have the shipments of weapons from Israel to Azerbaijan tend to increase right before there is some kind of military action that breaks out against Armenia. So he tracked it like in previous years. Now, going back to the history with Azerbaijan and Armenia, if you go back to the last couple of wars, like in 2020 was a bigger one, and then there was another one threatening to break out in 2023. But in the 2020 war, there were, I think, something like 6,000 Armenians were killed, and many of it was mainly with the use of Israeli weapons. Then in 2023, when war was about to break out again, but what happened instead was the Republic of what the Armenians call Artsakh, which was an independently declared republic comprised of ethnic Armenians. That was a portion of land that Azerbaijan said is theirs. They called it Nagorno-Karabakh. And there were 120,000 Armenians that were living there at the time. And when Azerbaijan started to come in militarily and bombing the place, and a lot of the people fled. And so it started with just a little, and then in the end, 120,000 Armenians fled into Armenia itself, like from this republic, and now it's just Azerbaijani. So now what you see also, I want to go back and talk about the geopolitical issues, that Armenia is a nation of 3 million. It's a predominantly Christian nation, and it's in between Turkey and Azerbaijan on the west and the east, and then the north is Georgia, and then this little bit, little sliver where it goes down there toward the south, a little bit of a border with Iran. And that border right there, that very small bit of mileage right there, is the reason that Armenia has traditionally had good relations with Iran, while Iran has had not as good relations with Azerbaijan and Turkey. So Iran uses that border to be able to get export into Armenia, and then through Armenia to up to Georgia, and wherever. Anyway, that is political interest of Iran to maintain relations with Armenia, and of course Armenia, in this neighborhood where Turkey and Azerbaijan are enemy nations, actually needs the support of Iran. But what's been happening lately is actually that Iran and Azerbaijan have been working out their relations. And the day that Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran, was killed in a helicopter crash, what was that? That was in May. I think it was May 12th. Something like that. That day, or 17th. Anyway, that day, the reason he was in that part of the country was it's the border with Azerbaijan, and they were meeting. He was meeting with the president, Aliyev, with the president of Azerbaijan. They were working on like a joint project where they have a dam on the border, and then since then they actually had a joint military exercise. So now it's kind of all crazy, because if you go back, so why does Israel maintain good relations with Azerbaijan, which is a Muslim nation, And so usually, Israel has usually traditionally antagonistic relations with Muslim nations, like such as Turkey. Turkey being a good ally of Azerbaijan as well. So why is it that Israel and Turkey are on again, off again, mostly off, but they're okay with Azerbaijan? And why does Israel have generally not great relations like with Lebanon, Syria, like these other Muslim nations, but is great with Azerbaijan? And even before they had normalization agreements with the UAE and Bahrain, they had these good relations with Azerbaijan. So one of the reasons that many people suspect is because of the long and the shared border between Azerbaijan and Iran. Many people have said that Israel uses that border in order to spy on Iran, and that's one of the reasons. Now, of course, there's also oil that I think Azerbaijan sells to everyone, not just Israel, but they have generally maintained a good relation. Now, the other thing between Israel and Armenia is that Armenia, the Armenian people went through a genocide in 1914 to 1918. There was genocide. 1.5 million Armenians were killed at the hands of the Turks during the Ottoman Empire. But Israel has not officially recognized the genocide. Like the US even was a holdout for a long time, but President Biden actually recognized the genocide in the last couple years, and Israel still hasn't. So that's also a bit of angst between from Armenia, like toward Israel, is like, you're supplying our neighbors that are killing us with your weapons, and you're also not recognizing our genocide, which, according to, Hitler said, Adolf Hitler said, we can carry out a genocide against the Jews here in Germany and all over Europe, because after all, who remembers the Armenians? So he actually used that basis as a basis for saying, like, it's possible to get away with it. So that has been a long time tension between the two countries. All right, so that is the geopolitical. Mind you, if you look at a map, and I should have pulled one up earlier. Well, you know what? I'm going to do that right now. Let's see. Map Caucasus. Let's see, and then I can share it. All right. Here's a decent map. Let's take a look at this. I have to share my screen. It's so technical. Hold on. Map Caucasus. There it is. There it is. There it is. Okay. So now you can see you've got Turkey here, large country. Don't even see most of it. You see like just this little section of it. But you see, like in pink here is Armenia. This must be an older map, or maybe people are slow to transition. But you see Azerbaijan here in yellow, mustard yellow, and then you see like the lighter yellow here, Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh for the Armenians, and there's the capital, Stepanakert. So that is now all within, this whole region is within Azerbaijan, under their control. Now you see also there's this little sliver of yellow that is also Azerbaijan. So now one of the issues like between Azerbaijan and also Turkey is they want to run a road through this part of Armenia that dips down toward Iran. Now you see Iran borders Turkey. This part of it used to be part of Armenia, but it became Azerbaijan, the Nakhchivan corridor here. And then there's this small border in pink that you see between Armenia and Iran, and then the rest of it is Azerbaijan. And so Azerbaijan wants to build a road through the Sunyuk province here to reach the Nakhchivan corridor, and Armenia has been opposed to it. Iran has been opposed to it, but I also suspect that some of their talks recently is like to come to an agreement, because usually Azerbaijan does get what it wants. Oh my gosh. So Dot is now asking me questions that I know not of. Are Chechnya and Dagestan independent countries within the former? Are they independent? Chechnya is independent now, right? It's an independent country. I don't know. Journalists, you got to be like a political scientist or something. I don't know. Good questions. I don't know, but I'm going to go look that up after. Actually, if you want to look it up and then put in the chat, that'd be awesome. Okay, so let me check something here. Okay, so I asked questions of some reporters. I've been scrambling for comments from officials. I have not heard back. I'm not going to say who I asked or who I talked to, but either I haven't heard back, or they said they are not commenting yet. Like a minister in the Palestinian government actually also said we will have a statement on this in a few days, but not now. So so I have nothing official to tell you, but the questions that I was asking, was this decision to recognize a Palestinian state sudden, or something that had been discussed or debated? And the people that I did speak with, like off the record or for background, said that, and these are reporters sitting in Yerevan, or the capital of Armenia, said, no, this was out of the blue. They had not heard anything like this. It hadn't been debated. They don't know what the impetus was to announce it today. I also asked, like, if there was any insights as to the timing, and they did not have any idea about the timing. I also asked, what are the implications for the Jewish community in Armenia? And I spoke with a Jewish man in Armenia who gave me some really good answers. So Nathaniel Trubkin is living in Yerevan, or living in Armenia, and said that this was very unexpected for the Jews living in Armenia, and that the community is divided between those who believe it's a reaction to the arms trade with Azerbaijan. And then there's others who just believe that Armenia is losing its chance to establish relations with Israel. And one theory that's going around is that Erdogan, I'm about to pull on Chuck Holton. Okay, let me get him the link. But that Erdogan, who's president of Turkey, actually pressed the prime minister of Armenia, who is Nikol Pashinyan, to recognize Palestine as a state. So now Nathaniel said that he doesn't think that there will be consequences for the Jews in Armenia. And he said that they feel comfortable there, they feel safe, and that except for a few individual cases of vandalism, he doesn't believe it's going to affect their lives. And by the way, the Armenians they downplay these reports of the Armenian Jews downplay the reports of anti-Semitism in Armenia and say that's not the case, despite, for instance, what the Jerusalem Post reported. They, in fact, in an interview with the chief rabbi, he said that it was done a couple months ago by CivilNet. The chief rabbi said, it's completely safe to live as a Jew in Armenia. So let me see if I can pull on Chuck Holton, who was literally just in Armenia. And thank you, Dot, for getting back to us on that. These are two federal subdivisions within the Russian Federation. Thank you. Okay, so if you guys know Chuck Holton, let me see. He is a reporter. And he's a freelance reporter, a war correspondent, and let me see if I'm forwarding this link to him now. And he's been both covering, he covered the war in Armenia. He's also covered the war here. He's been here several times since October 7th and has been reporting on what happens here. So, all right, so let's see. I sent him the link and we'll see if he comes on. But my other question is how this is going to impact the Armenian diaspora, particularly that live in Israel. Because what happens is in politics these days, recognition of a Palestinian state means that you must, it's like against Israel. It's a slap in the face of Israel. So here in the Jewish state of Israel, there is a small Armenian community that has been here for 1,700 years, and the relations are already tense, to say the least. Whether it's, there have been recently, like in recent months, it's like the last year and a half, increase in violence, attacks, vandalism, and scuffles between Armenians and the Orthodox Jews walking through the Armenian Quarter. And the Armenian Quarter in particular has been a what do you call it? A target by these guys. So it went from being, I just did an interview. I could put the link up later in a Dutch newspaper, that while in the past the attacks have traditionally been by like the ultra Orthodox against Christians in general, lately it's been the national religious as well, and it's against the Christians and the Armenians, and not just against like Christians that wear a cross or a robe or whatever, but like the people in the Armenian Quarter or the people standing outside of a church. So whereas the ultra-Orthodox mostly would just spit at the priest or the church itself, these guys are taking it up another level. It started with the vandalization of a cemetery in outside the old city, the Anglican cemetery. And after that included a restaurant that is Christian owned, and vandalizing, like writing on the walls of the Armenian convent, "Death to Christians, death to Armenians." And then also there's a big deal with the a property issue, and I haven't even begun to talk about this. And of course, one of the questions that I have is, will this this apparent slap in the face by Armenia to Israel, is this going to impact the Israeli what do you call it? The Israeli the court case that's going on right now, where Armenia might where the Armenian Quarter might actually have been part of it leased out to a developer, and then would be basically out of Armenian hands for a while. So there's a lot of questions. Now, I spoke with a few people. One said, I don't want to, hold on a second. I'm not going to say who. I didn't tell anybody I was using their names when I spoke. One was like, well, of course, it's not going to affect the court case, because this is the legals. We trust the legal system. Legal is legal. And anti-Semitism isn't a legal argument. And in any way, it's not, an anti-Semitic move. And somebody else said, well, of course, it's going to affect the legal position of the Armenian community that wants to keep the land. So anyway, for that, I would refer you to some of my past articles, which I'll post later on in the comments. Okay, so let me ask. All right. I'm just checking to see if Chuck Holton is joining. And if he can't or whatever, he's about to do a live as well. So right after this. So, okay. So he said he's about to jump on right now. So let's see. Let's see if we can work this out. I mean, this is the most technical thing I've ever done. Don't look. Yeah. All right. Any questions in the meantime? I mean, it's like we're sitting here in the middle of a war and we're talking about nothing related, almost not related to the war. What else, Tony? What did I not hit on?
I wasn't here for the whole thing, so I don't know what you did.
That's chilling. We're all waiting, right?
Chuck Bolton will have a lot more to add to that.
I also want to talk to, this was really like a surprise to everybody. I sent this. Wait, there's something else I wanted to also mention is that we're all talking about like Armenia versus somehow it's Armenia versus Azerbaijan. Let's see. Okay, how do I do this? I'm figuring this out. Let's see. Yes. Let's try it like this. Well, Chuck Holton will be there. This is awesome. All right, for now I'm putting him like this. How's that? Oh, you're here. You're here. Awesome.
I'm here. I just had to get my earphones.
And so you were just in Armenia yesterday, you said, or you just got back to the U.S., maybe not from Armenia.
Right. You're right. I just got back from Armenia.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So I've done a lot of background, like I've given a lot of the background and stuff like that. And I want to ask you a few questions as well. But one thing I was going to say that I didn't say before is that everybody's talking about like Armenia versus Azerbaijan, like who's the better friend of Israel? And, clearly the sides have been taken because Armenia has dared to now recognize Palestine as a state. But Azerbaijan did that in 1992. So, so that's no longer valid argument. I mean, that like in that case, like that's one of the arguments we can take off the table. Who's the better, the better friend of Israel in this case. But so if we're going to use that and all the people who are posting right now, because a lot of people are posting that, it goes to show like who's the better, Armenia, Israel and Azerbaijan. They're showing that video of them with the flags next to each other, Israeli, Azeri flags next to each other. They're saying now we see who Israel's true friends are and not their enemies. But if you're just talking about this one issue, Azerbaijan did this in 1992.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really complex issue because of the interconnected geopolitics of that region and the power plays by Russia, Iran, the United States, Israel, Syria. Everybody's all sort of mangled together. Having spent a lot of time in Israel over the last 8-9 months, probably 4 months of that. So about half of the war I've been there. If you ask Israelis about Armenia, they'll say, I don't know anything about Romania.
Right.
They don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, Israelis didn't think once about the effects on Armenia when they allied themselves with Azerbaijan. They saw Azerbaijan as a source of fuel and as a fellow enemy of Iran. And that's the only reason that Israel had anything to do with Azerbaijan, and a market for their weapons. And honestly, if Armenia had come to Israel and said, we want to buy some of your weapons, they would have happily sold weapons to Armenia as well. So it wasn't a sin of commission so much as it was a sin of omission, just because the Israelis just didn't give a second thought to the second and third order effects of their relationship with Azerbaijan. They only thought about the first order effects, which is that it would be an ally with them against Iran. And this is typical for bureaucracies, it's typical for governments, and Israel is not immune to that. The problem with this tit for tat, okay, well, we're angry at Israel now, so we're going to recognize Palestine. The Armenian politicians are not thinking of the second and third order effects either. They're playing. This is like 9-year-old schoolyard bullies, going at it on the playground, and they're not thinking about what's going to happen because of this. This is going to make Christians in Israel that much more at risk.
Yeah.
This is going to make Jews more hostile to people who actually should be their best friends, who are commanded to bless them. And I think that what it shows is that the secular government of Armenia, every time you go to Armenia, you are going to hear at least 3 times a day that Armenia was the world's first Christian country. And that's a great thing. Armenia is built on a foundation of Christianity, and that foundation makes Armenia the safest country in Asia, a place where there's literally not one neighborhood in that entire country where I would not happily send my wife alone at 11 o'clock at night. There's no place I would worry about her. It's a very, very safe country because of the heritage that Armenia has. But today's Armenia is not a Christian country. Today's Armenia is a post-Soviet country. There are a lot of Christians there. There are a lot of devout Christians there that will be way in front of me in line getting into heaven, that's for sure. But as a government, the government cannot be Christian. Because the government is not an individual. It's not a personal entity. It can perhaps respect Christian values, and I would argue that it's not doing that in this case, and that's why I'm saying that the government of Armenia right now is as secular can be, because they're only thinking of the political ramifications of making this declaration, and they're not thinking about the moral repercussions to them and to their country for this. And I believe that to have a good government is to have a government who thinks of the moral question first and then considers the political question, not the other way around. And America is not that country right now. Armenia is proving itself not to be that country right now. To do the right thing first and then try to worry about the political fallout of doing the right thing is go ahead.
No, so what does Armenia have to gain by recognizing Palestine right now? Like what allies does that bring in, or how does it bolster them? I mean, I understand they're in a tough neighborhood and they've got all sorts of geopolitical issues right there in the region. Is it Turkey? Is it, what?
No,
what do they have to gain?
I mean, you still, okay, 2 things. Firstly, I just came from there, and the local media is talking about that this is an attempt by the Armenian government to add to the pressure on Israel to end the war. Well, here's the problem with that. Israel didn't start the war. And Israel cannot end the war so long as the enemy is still fighting. Otherwise, there's a name for that. It's called losing, right? So in a sense, what Armenia is doing, along with the United States and others, is they are pressuring Israel to lose the war and to ensure that there will be another attack, which, by the way, was an attack not just on Israelis. It was an attack on lots of Armenians. There were a lot of Armenians in the way of those missiles that Iran fired at Jerusalem the other day, like in April. Okay, so they say that they're trying to put pressure on Israel to end the war. That is not the way to do that. That is a very, very clumsy and pretty retarded way to try to put pressure on this war to try to get the war to end. The quickest way to get the war to end would have been everybody send weapons and equipment and support and intel to Israel to allow them to crush Hamas, get their hostages back, and then the war's over. But the United States and now apparently Armenia are engaging in this faulty idea that the way to end a war is just to stop fighting. But that's called losing if the enemy is not done fighting yet. And so that is one thing that the press in Armenia is saying. The other thing is, while we were there, we saw a lot of Russian soldiers. So a lot of them have left, especially out in Sunik. But we were in Vik, which is right there on the border with Sunik province. And there were a lot of Russian soldiers there. Still basing. And so soldiers. It seems like Russia is Hamas, and overtly in many ways by Hamas leader. Now they're flying combat along the Syria-Israeli border, the Golan Heights, which actually gives for Iran to move. So Russia is aligning itself with and Iran. Armenia can't really afford to further anger Russia. So perhaps, this is just a speculation on my part, perhaps this move is a worthless gesture to try to, maybe placate Russia a little bit, because Russia's already pretty upset with them about declaring that they're going to leave the CSTO and all that. I don't know that that's the case, because you'd have to get inside the head of Pashinyan and his people to figure that out. But that may be one reason. That's one plausible explanation for why they're doing this. Also, on the same, on the other hand, the other side of the same coin, you could say that the United States, which has been making big inroads into Armenia, we saw a lot of American, not diplomats, just agents, people there that are out in Sunik province. We saw them in Jermuk. We saw them going down from Goris down towards Tatev. There are Americans and people from the European Union there that are basically just there, parking there to keep Azerbaijan from shooting more mortars at Armenia and trying to take that province. But with the United States, we literally have U.S. troops in Armenia every week now training the Armenian military. And so it's not out of the realm of possibility that Anthony Blinken gave a phone call to Pashinyan and said, hey, it would really be good if you'd join us on this, because we're pushing really hard to get Israel to end the war. And so you could be helpful by doing that.
That's so interesting.
That's an idea.
That's one idea. I know. And actually there's one in the chat right now that maybe it's a pledge from Turkey to hold back Azerbaijan, which is also, I'm sure there's a million ways we could go with this.
Yeah, backdoor deals like that would be being made.
And like Russia, like you said, because, I didn't really talk about, of all the geopolitical things I talked about before you jumped out, I didn't mention Russia. I mentioned more Iran and Azerbaijan, what's happening now in Turkey, of course, but about the Armenian move away from Russia. But you know what, since you were just there, I want to know, are there, like we see in the media from everywhere around the world, you see these protests, the pro-Palestine, free Palestine, pro-Hamas protests out there. Were there those in Armenia as well?
None. I didn't see one. I saw a couple of instances of graffiti on a wall somewhere that had a Palestinian flag or said "Free Palestine." Just a couple in Yerevan.
Okay.
But actually, I didn't see any of that. And of course, the Armenians that I'm meeting and talking to are in one of two camps. They're either mostly expat expats married to Armenians or
Mhm.
Armenians that run in the expat community. And so those people are going to think more like Americans, and they're not going to be for
Okay.
pro-Palestinian anything. The other group that I'm talking to are, people that live in villages and the folks that we stay with and things like that. And that's not really the kind of topic of conversation that would come up. But when it did, those people certainly really didn't even understand much about the conflict because they're busy just trying to make a living following their sheep around or whatever.
Yeah.
So the kind of people who would be pro-Palestinian are not the kind of people that I would be hanging around with in Yerevan for sure.
Mhm.
But I did not see a large groundswell of support for
Mhm.
Palestine or Israel. And of course, if you talk to most Armenians, they will definitely point out that Israel sort of sold them down the river
Yeah.
by selling weapons to Azerbaijan. And when I retort to that yes, but they're not thinking about Armenia there. They're just thinking about their own interests. And they said, well, we should be, and what they like to point out, which says a lot about the worldview in Armenia, is that from a moral standpoint, Israel should be standing with Armenia. And they are
Mhm.
100% correct about that. And
Yeah.
it is wrong on many levels for the Israeli government not to support Armenia. They will. I've had a lot of Armenians point out to me that the Israelis have never acknowledged the Armenian genocide. That's actually not true. I visited a monument to the Armenian genocide in the city of Haifa, and I've heard a lot of
Okay.
a lot of Israelis bring up the Armenian genocide
Mhm.
when talking about this current conflict.
That's true, but the Knesset has never passed it. It's never been an official piece of legislation, and that's actually something that comes up every time it comes up. It's a big debate, and of course, between Turkey, the renaissance of relations with Turkey since the flotilla incident about 10 years ago, and then between then and now, which relations are going down again. But there was always like pushback against recognizing the genocide, and then you had a few of the left-wing politicians saying we have to do it, and then not even the left wing actually. In Israel, left and right wing is not.
Very, very different than the
Yeah,
United.
it's not what it appears to be.
The
Yeah.
right wing in Israel would be the left wing in the United States. I think.
But it's so funny. Is one who's like she's a Knesset member who's very leftist on social issues, but right on security issues, and she's one of them who wants to recognize the Armenian genocide. But
I went to the Armenian. I'm sorry. I went to the Armenian Genocide Museum the other day and was very interested because they have an entire wall dedicated to other genocides around the world, and
okay,
and they, it was just interesting to see them acknowledging the Holocaust, acknowledging the Holodomor and all these other
uh-huh.
genocides that took place.
And
It's,
there's also in Yerevan somewhere. Well, I don't remember where we walked by it. There's a statue dedicated to the Holocaust and to the Jews of Armenia. And I remember, I mean, I took pictures of it. I remember when we saw it, and I was like, wait a second, this is like partly in Hebrew, and so that's why I could read it because I can't read Armenian.
oh,
But yeah, so it was fascinating to see that, and I was like, wow, you see, there really is like the people themselves seem to be okay, with
again, this
Israel.
is why I point out that the
Mhm.
government being the government is not the people. They're supposed to be of the people, but they're not. They
Mhm.
think that a poor government, poor leadership thinks of the political ramifications first and the moral ramifications second. And a good leadership would think of the moral ramifications first
Mhm.
and let the politics fall where they may.
Mhm.
And I think that it's incumbent on all of us to push our leadership to do the right thing, regardless of the political fallout of the right thing. And that is not incumbent on any particular party, any particular tribe.
Hmm.
There's so many Americans who are, they're so wedded to their political tribe that even when the other side does something right or their side does something wrong, they can't call it right or wrong. They
Hmm.
cannot allow themselves to do that, to do anything that would counter the narrative of their tribe. And that's wrong, because the Bible is very clear. Righteousness exalts a nation. You want your nation to be great? You want America to be great? Righteousness is what does that. Requiring righteousness of our leaders and requiring righteousness in ourselves is the only way that we can make our nation great. And so that's a good lesson both for Armenia and for Israel and for the United States.
Yeah, it's even like beyond like just the ability to debate what is righteous, and that doesn't exist anymore. And
Right.
also, like for instance, one of the being sitting here in Jerusalem, the first my immediate response was, how's this going to impact the Armenians here and the Armenian community, and the land issue that they have going
Mhm.
on, and just the fact that
They got enough problems.
they have enough, and it's like they're already between a rock and a hard place. And also, many of the Armenians here are they identify, that you can't use that anymore, identify as like Palestinian. They're many of especially in Jerusalem, they're not Israeli citizens. They're Armenian, but maybe more like I don't know, Palestinian. I mean, in terms of their politics, for sure. And also, some of them are, one of the parents is Arab, from
Yeah.
the West Bank, and the other one, so there's
There are a lot more Palestinian Christians than there are Jewish, or Christians of Jewish descent, for
yeah.
sure. So that would make sense that they would.
Right, and with the Armenians too, like it's just politically, they are neutral here. Many of them are neutral, or could be more Palestinian or more Israeli. So for them, and also how this is going to impact them. Now, there's been a huge campaign. I don't say what I think is behind it, but we do know what is caviar diplomacy. And I have to say that I have seen articles in Israeli media, sometimes in Hebrew and sometimes in English, that disparage the reputation of Armenia. They portray it as very anti-Semitic, and also the Armenians here are portrayed as that, though they're not. And it looks like a campaign, actually, to push this agenda to give Armenia and Armenians a bad rap, which causes more conflict. Because, like you said, like most Israelis, you say, hey, what about Armenia? And they'll say, Romania? No. But which is sad, but that they don't know about it. But at the same time, sometimes the first thing they hear about it is that Armenia recognized the Palestinian state, or Armenians burned down a synagogue in Yerevan, which, by the way, it was never determined who burned down the synagogue. And it's
that was there was something fishy about that.
There is the reporter I spoke to today, he said that the person who did it, that the government says they didn't say they knew who it was, but they said the person flew in to Armenia, went through whatever, started a fire, and then got back on a plane and left Armenia. And that's it. That's the only information we have.
That to me sounds like agents provocateurs.
It does.
And could, without a doubt, be a Russian FSB agent doing that, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Because again, Russia needs this conflict. Russia needs this conflict in Israel, and they need it to continue, and they need it to be expensive, and they need it to be divisive between all of America and all of her neighbors and allies. And so they are doing things. This is the way of war in World War III. I've been saying for a long time that we're in World War III. It just isn't going to look like World War II, because now all the major players have nuclear weapons. And so rather than fighting conventionally between two nuclear powers, that's not going to happen. because neither power can lose. And what happens is then everybody loses when somebody goes nuclear. So the way of war now is this asymmetric warfare, and it's cyber, it's financial, it's espionage, it's social media, all of these different ways to try to sow chaos and division. And by the way, they're winning. They're doing a very good job at sowing chaos and division in the United States. China and Russia both are doing a lot. China is killing 100,000 Americans a year with the fentanyl that they're punching into the United States. So all of that together is warfare, and it would make total sense. It wouldn't make any sense for an Armenian to go burn the door of a synagogue in Yerevan. None. There aren't enough. I mean, there are a few Muslims, very, very, very few Muslims in Armenia. There are some Indians. They don't really care one way or the other.
Right.
But for a Russian FSB agent to fly in and to make it look like Armenia is attacking Jews in order to sow division between Armenia and Israel, it would make total sense. And I'm of the belief they call it Occam's razor, that the simplest example, or the simplest answer that makes the most sense is likely the right one.
Man, this is such a web here. There's a question in the chat about what do you think of the anti-Armenian government protests in Armenia, and would they be pro-Israel? Now, I don't know anything about Armenian politics, so
and I'm not an expert on it, but I was there for a month and a half, so I saw a lot of them happening. So you have the government under Pashinyan, who has ceded over several abandoned villages along the border with Azerbaijan to Azerbaijan, because when the border was drawn way back, under Stalin, there were 5 exclaves given to Armenia inside Azerbaijan, and there were 5 exclaves given to Azerbaijan inside Armenia to balance it out. The largest of the two, the largest exclaves were Artsakh and Nakhichevan. Okay. And so that was just the way he drew it. He drew that most likely to cause division and hardship, because, it would have been maybe caused violence or caused an uprising if they had forcibly relocated the people of all of these areas. At that time, Artsakh was 300,000 Armenians.
Oh, wow.
And of course there was even more than that in Nakhichevan that were Azeri or Turkic. And so they just said, okay, we'll just draw circles around these things and call those, those will swap 5 for 5. Well, the smaller ones encompass just a single village, each one of them. And you can imagine what it would be like living in one of those villages where you're surrounded by a country that doesn't like you. You can't drive from your village into your country because there's a separation there, and that separation is the enemy country. And this is the case on both sides. So what happened was people just moved out of all 5 of those villages, except for Artsakh and Nakhichevan. For the most part, people abandoned those other villages, and they just were kept as exclaves of the other country. Well, Azerbaijan started by going to the exclaves that were inside Azerbaijan and saying, look, this is Azerbaijan. We're going to take this. And that was their argument when they took Artsakh. It's surrounded by Azerbaijan. It's a 4-hour drive from Armenia. This is not Armenia, so we're going to take it. Even though it's been Armenian since the time of Noah, and there's, multi-thousand-year-old, Armenian history built all throughout that region. It's kind of hard to deny that it was populated by Armenians, but they said, no, that's Albanian. That's not Armenian writing. That's Albanian. So that
Albanian.
That's what they said. They said, oh, that's Caucasian Albanian or something else. It's not Armenian. So they started by taking over all of those exclaves, and the ones that were 1 village each, Armenia didn't make much of a fuss about, because it was like, well, nobody lives there. It's just empty land anyway. So yeah, whatever. If that'll placate Azerbaijan, then so be it. But then Azerbaijan started saying, well, now we want the ones that are inside Armenia. And even that wouldn't be such a big deal, except for the fact that two of those exclaves, I drove right through one of them the other day, are on the main road that allows you to drive from Yerevan to Goris and Yerevan to Georgia in the north, through Tavush province. And so if those now become Azerbaijan, now you've got to cross an international border
Oh my gosh.
to get somewhere within your own country. And if you've been to northern Armenia, you know that it's crisscrossed by these very, very deep gorges. So it would be really difficult for them to build another road around that. But so Azerbaijan came and said, we want these exclaves. This is our Azerbaijan. So they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. We want the ones that were given to Armenia that are inside Azerbaijan, but we also want the ones that are inside Armenia that were given to Azerbaijan, that were Azeri villages. Like we want all of it. Armenia can't have any. Okay. So obviously a lot of people got pretty upset about that. The problem is, from a realistic standpoint, Azerbaijan comes and says, there's these 3 empty villages up in the remote area in the border of Armenia, and we want that land. And if you give us that land, if you don't give us that land, we're going to take it by force. So Armenia has to look and say, okay, Azerbaijan's military is 5 times the size of ours. Oh, and by the way, they're backed up by Turkey, the 8th largest military on planet Earth. It'd be like fighting the Americans. And for what? For 3 empty pieces of ground, small empty pieces of ground? Or we go back to war and potentially lose 5,000 of our 5,000 more young men in another war over some empty ground. It's a bad choice either way. There's no good choice there. My guess is that the government looked at those 2 bad choices and said, well, the lesser of those 2 evils is the one that does not include us losing 5,000 of our own men and going to war again, because we're just not prepared for that. But and we know that if you give Azerbaijan an inch, they're going to try and take a mile. So they're not going to be done if we hand them that. They're not going to say, okay, we'll leave you alone now. They're going to then say, okay, now we want the Zangezur corridor down in Sunik province. We want Sunik province. We want all of Armenia as Western Azerbaijan, which is what they always say. And so they know that this is not over if they give up that land. But so then it becomes a question of, do we fight? Do we go to war now? Or do we go to war 5 years from now, or maybe a couple of years from now, where we've had a couple more years time to arm ourselves, to train ourselves, to ally ourselves with France and the United States and others who might actually come to our aid rather than Russia? And in that equation, the government decided that discretion was the better part of valor, and we should just give them that empty land and try to extract from them some promises in writing that they're not going to attack us anymore if we give them that. And then we know that's not going to, we know they're not good for their word, but we're going to try. And then we're going to spend the next couple of years frantically trying to retrain our troops to fight like Americans, not like Soviets. And that's why there are American troops in Armenia every week right now. And we're going to frantically try to realign ourselves with the West. I got told several times when I was in Armenia this trip, I'd say, this is the safest country in Asia. And they'd say, we're not in Asia, we're in Europe. We're European. And I go, no, you're in Asia. If you're east of Istanbul, you're in Asia. Mm-hmm. That's called Asia. You can't just decide that you want to be European.
Yeah.
And, because what if Thailand did that? What if Mexico decided to be European? Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, well, we want to identify as European. and they're doing that because they really They know that they can't count on Russia to support them against Azerbaijan. If anything, Russia is now encouraging Azerbaijan to put pressure on Armenia. And so they've got to realign themselves, but that takes time. And so the protests in Armenia right now are between the group of people led by a bishop in the church who are like, we should never give 1 inch of Armenian land, and okay, I mean, I can see that argument, but how many Armenian men are you willing to kill to not give up 1 inch of Armenian land? Because you're going to lose that war anyway. I mean, you just don't have the military might anymore to fight them. So either you're going to lose that land and a bunch of your men, or you're going to lose that land diplomatically and not lose any of your men. And this is the big argument in Armenia right now. And this one particular bishop who is really using this to make a name for himself politically, he's going to be the hardline nationalist, that's going to oust Pashinyan and be the next prime minister, that's I think his delusions of grandeur. He's kind of behind a lot of this, and I believe that there are plenty of agents provocateurs from Russia that are in those crowds, whipping up the fury of the people as well.
Against who or for?
Against Pashinyan.
Against Pashinyan. Wow. That is just, it's such a tough position to be in. I mean, looking at what Azerbaijan already did and looking at the world response, I mean, everybody's talking about genocide in Gaza, whether or not there's genocide going on in Gaza. Now, I remember a year before talking about, like almost a year ago now, talking about whether or not there was genocide happening at the hand by Azerbaijan against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and Artsakh, and they had a blockade where they were starving them to death, actually. So, and nobody did anything. Russia stood down. Everybody condemned Azerbaijan. Everybody, put out their very strong statements, the EU, America, everybody, but nobody did anything until the writing on the wall, late September, where everybody just came flooding through and nobody stopped it. And even like, it's one thing to stop when they're leaving and the exodus is going on, but why didn't nobody forced that blockade to be opened and for the aid trucks to go through while people were in there dying? And it's like, beyond my understanding that none of these foreign governments did this.
It would have been very, very easy for Russia to load up trucks with aid and drive them in there. Now, they did do that to a very minor extent. I was there on the border at the checkpoint watching Russian trucks go back and forth into Artsakh, but it was a pittance. It might as well, it was so that Russia could say, yeah, we're doing something, but they certainly were not doing enough to actually make a difference.
No, I think it was something like from June 15th until the invasion actually in September that not one truck got through and not one person got out who needed medical attention, and no medical supplies got in. And it was like unfolding before our eyes and nobody moved. But a lot of the people,
because this went on for a long time. When I was there was the previous October. No, I'm sorry, March. I was there in March or April.
It started on like December 12th.
Yeah, no, I was there. I was there in March or April of 2023, and that's when I went down to the border and saw it. Yeah, but you're right, and it's nuclear level hypocrisy for Russia to be trying to condemn Israel for quote unquote blockading, Gaza. When
oh no! Don't tell me we lost Chuck. Or is it my internet?
For you.
Okay. All right. I lost you for a second. You said when Russia.
When it's hard to say that Israel is genociding the Gazans when they are literally providing like millions of gallons of fresh water every day. They are providing electricity. They are literally processing the sewage from Gaza, and they are allowing more trucks into Gaza every day than were going in before the war started. So if they're genociding the Gazans, they're doing a really, really bad job. Israel really sucks.
Listen, people can take this issue from both directions, and actually anybody. There are Palestinians that compare themselves to the Armenians and what happened in Artsakh and the genocide there. So everybody's taking it from a different angle and putting themselves in, like, oh yeah, this is what happened in Artsakh and we're cut off and we're not getting in. I mean, I know what you're saying. There is aid getting in, and then there are people saying it's not enough and it's not. And of course,
these are people that by and large are not there.
The Azeris essentially, they let the Armenians leave, and whereas the Gazans have nowhere to go. They can't get out.
This is true.
They can't get out. So they're stuck. They're sitting ducks. They're not getting into Egypt, and they're definitely not getting into Israel. That was, October 7th. That was enough, I guess. So that's not happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's it's interesting, and it's also interesting what you were saying about the land, how it's cut off, and there was like Nagorno-Karabakh, part of Azerbaijan, because it was disconnected from Armenia, and you think, oh my gosh, and that's why also there's no final agreement here, because the West Bank is cut off from Gaza. And so where would you put a Palestinian state, and how would you connect it? And would you have that 2-hour drive between Gaza and the West Bank? And how would you protect it? But anyway.
Yeah.
Wait, I lost you again, or me? Oh man, when I play this back, I'll be able to tell if it's my internet or yours, Chuck. I don't know. It could be mine.
It's I don't know. I'm in West Virginia, so
And I'm in Jerusalem, so you never know. But well, listen, this was awesome. I'll take this as a sign to stop. But
yeah, I've got to go live on my own channel in 4 minutes. So
awesome. Okay, all right. So where can people find you and jump on your live?
The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton on YouTube. And I'm on there almost every day.
Yeah, and you are. Yeah, I always said it's like, where's Waldo? It's where's Chuck? Like you're the most trackable person in the world, because you are on Facebook. I mean, on YouTube, like in a different country every time you go live. So it's great.
I know, it's crazy.
Awesome, and you'll be coming to Israel in a couple months. So
yeah, I'll be back there in about a month, mid-August to mid-September.
Oh, cool. Okay. Awesome.
So
All right.
Get together and have some falafel.
Definitely. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for your insights. This was awesome.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. That was awesome. That was great to get Chuck's perspective from just so many different angles. I mean, he's been there, he's covered, in Armenia and covered the war, and just knows so much about it, has like a lot of good facts from the ground. Just from being there, you get a sense of the proportion of all of these political issues. But anyway, that's that. And listen, I'm still not satisfied with the answers of why and why now. I mean, I'm still holding out for answers like that. And I want to talk to more people. So stay tuned, subscribe here, subscribe also at Chuck at the Hot Zone, Chuck Holton at the Hot Zone, but subscribe here as well. And I'll tell when I come up with these answers here, I'm going to, when I get more interviews, I'll reveal them. I don't know if we're getting answers, but we're getting somebody's answers. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. And